Hi there, I'm Sheena Aloni, and we are here today for the DragonCon diversity track with a brand new panel for you guys. Today's panel is Breaking the Stigma, hoping to end the stigmas of mental health in the BIPOC community. So with us today, we have our lovely panel, and I'll let you guys go through and introduce yourselves one by one. We'll start with Shay.
I'm Shay Rains, Shay D. Athena Rains. That's where you want to find me professionally. I am a mental health professional, a therapist, a psychotherapist. I basically just talk to people. And of course, I'm a nerd and a member of the BIPOC community. So thank you.
Thank you. Moana?
Hi, everyone. My name is Moana McAdams. I am the founder and creator of the Moana Nui Podcast, which is a storytelling podcast for the BIPOC community. I'm also a children's book author for the Adventures of Nakoa and Nohea children's book series, and an editor and publisher for Burning Spear Comics and the Wild Card Chronicles comic book series.
Thank you so much. Morgan, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Morgan Iverson. I'm the writer and creator for Lumberjax with Fourth Wall Productions. I also am a part of one half of the production team for the Super Shorts podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts. And I just started a show, Top 5 Live, where every week we'll discuss a top 5 of, it could be a top 5 R&B artists, top 5 comic characters of all time, just a whole bunch of stuff in pop culture. And I'm a creator at some point on a red carpet soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And lastly, we have Dana Morgan. Dana?
Hello, everyone. I am a cosplay, event, and con staff photographer, event planner, voice actor, and the other half of the Moana Nui podcast that has live episodes on Thursdays at 7 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. So I guess we'll just start by asking, why is there such a stigma around mental health in BIPOC communities? Why is that always seen as something we don't do or something that we're just now doing?
Well, I will speak. I've always heard, and especially in the older communities within the BIPOC community, therapy or going to a psychiatrist, that's for crazy people. And a lot of times outside of that, if you have problems, the ultimate source of fixing things is, well, we're going to pray for you. You need to pray, and then everything will be okay.
Go to church. Jesus will fix it.
Exactly. And, it's one of those things that I love. My grandma used to say, it's like, well, God made therapists. So you can have a therapist and praying at the same time, because they gave them the education to provide you with what you can't get through prayer. So, but a lot of people don't think that way. And it continues to be that stigma within our community that that's a white people thing. That's not for us. And, we just have to work hard and things will work out.
Agreed. Moana or Morgan, you all have anything to say?
Yeah, so I'll jump in on that one. I think at least, over the last, 10, 20 years, I guess, social media makes it a lot harder as well. Because social media can have you thinking and falling into the traps that everything you see on social media is rosy and peachy and nobody has problems and I'm living my best life. But nobody puts out the struggles. I mean, not nobody, some people do. Some people speak very authentically, but that's not the norm, right? Like most people want to try and project goodness and greatness. But as human beings, we all have both sides, right? And And so I think that kind of plays into that stigma, like, oh, I can't put it out there. Or I mean, I could, but people are going to attack me, because on social media, that's what the majority love to do. We love to go at it on things, keyboard warriors, all that kind of stuff. So I think that makes it even harder for someone who would want to speak about something to be more hesitant to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Moana and Dana said. I would add to it, I think, also the stigma of weakness, especially for Black men. If you are the type of person, we're taught from a very early age that crying is not allowed on any level. It doesn't matter what happened. So a lot of time, I think men in general, but especially Black men, because of, racial history in this country and all the other things that have gone on, you're taught to internalize things forever if you can. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what the trauma is. I mean, even using the word trauma can seem weak. You know what I mean? So your response as a Black man to almost anything, and this goes for Black women too, because Black women have been carrying so much, I would say, for the country as a whole, but especially for the Black community for forever, and then you also have to deal with the stigma of being, if you do react, more so for Black women than Black men, if you do react, then you're stereotyped as, the angry Black woman or some other something, or it's just another reason why you shouldn't be in the position you're in, why you shouldn't have this opportunity, why you shouldn't have that. And as a Black man, if you get angry, people already think you're scary. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You're scary just existing and breathing.
Yeah.
So, once you add into it that you're angry, that's where you get this quotes like, what was said about Michael Brown, that, I thought he was going to charge through my bullets. Or, when they killed Elijah McClain, put the bag on his head and said he had to be on something. He was really, really strong, because it took 5 of them to put a 130, 40-pound man on the ground for doing nothing. So, I think weakness is also a part of it, and people don't want to be associated with, especially Black men, because you're taught so early, you don't want to be associated with weakness, crazy, or any of those things. And I'm glad that I'm starting to see that change in the Black community, especially with Black men. Like I know Charlamagne the God, for people that listen to The Breakfast Club, has been huge on helping to shift Black men's mindsets towards that. So I'm excited about where I think things can go based on that.
Yeah. Shay?
What I hear the most from my clients is definitely everything everybody else has already said. But there's also the part of, there's a fear of getting judged. Because even when we want to be able to just talk to each other, just talk to our friends or whatever, we're taught from a very young age, home business stays at home, or, keep your business to yourself, hold other things to your chest, never let them see you sweat, so forth, so on. I'm sure we've all heard one combination or another from whoever in our lives at some point. And I hear that a lot, especially from my Black clients, because that's the thought process is, if at any point we are caught, quote unquote, slipping, that's going to be the day that you could die. So it's so important, at least from my perspective, from a professional perspective, to understand and acknowledge that it's not just a social norm. It is a survival instinct. And I really want to make sure that it's understood that it's not just weakness. It's not just, the threat used to be that if we were weak, or if we were seen as faulty or broken or whatever, because remember our history, especially in this country, but in every other country, including where our people originated, our bodies are a commodity. And if our minds are broken, especially if our mind is broken in an obvious kind of way, then we are disposable. And so it's really important to acknowledge that as a part of the equation, because when we just keep it on this surface level where it's just like, oh, we think about things this way because, that's just the messaging that we get. It's because it has been ingrained into us that if we don't portray this image, or if we are caught not being the strongest, the best, the whatever, we could die. So that's, it's really, really important, at least to me, to make sure that it's understood that it is that extreme. It is that serious to a lot of people, both consciously and unconsciously.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. You made me think about about something. So like the last time I was able to take a vacation, it occurred to me that like I think about my dad, and he went through a lot because my mother died when I was young, and so he was literally depressed for like 20 years and never sought help. And so like people get caught up in the rat race and just survival mode. You're just stuck in survival mode, and you don't take the time to really enjoy life, right? So like being on vacation, being at the ocean, that's my safe place. That's my haven. That's what renews me. And just what that does for my mental, you can't even put a price on that. But like so many people don't get to go away and take that break and just, because you're constantly in the grind. And what must that do to somebody? Like that's gotta be just stifling and depressing. So what are some of the most common ailments, I guess, that you see people of color coming into your office with?
Depression, but specifically, I'm going to get real technical here. And I apologize. Anybody who wants to interject a thought, please feel free, because this one goes a little bit deep too. It's called dysthymia, or persistent depression, we'll call it. And what this is basically you are constantly here, right? So you could be happy, but then very quickly you're going to come right back here. You could get really, really sad, but very quickly you're going to come right here. This is kind of where we get that, I'm okay, I'm content. You just won the lotto. Yeah, well, more money, more problems. Like that is a thing where our people actually get to rich heights, like supremely buying mom a house or whatever. And it's just like, I'm still getting stopped by the cops, people still having issues, so forth and so on. So there's a persistent depression that isn't that quote unquote extreme depression where your lows are super low. This is just where we exist. And especially in the culture, to simply exist here, this is why we have things like, one of my friends actually just posted it today, like the resting bitch face. This is why we have the concepts like, for example, the persistently angry Black woman or the angry Black man, where you don't see us smiling unless like it's an actual thing, where you can go into, I actually posted about this on my social media some time ago, asking Black men who told them that they weren't allowed to smile. Because there's a social thing where, for the most part, that's right up there. That can be considered right up there with being caught slipping. If you look too happy, it's a problem. So you very rarely see Black men in pictures looking happy.
Oh my God.
No old face. They're looking into a sunset, but it's still the GQ picture of, right? Not like a, if you look at all of your, let's say, non-Black friends' pictures, you can catch 15, 20 of their pictures where everybody in the picture is smiling. You look at our pictures, the greater majority of them, it's not just we don't smile, but when we are, you can, if you look closely enough, it's a smile that we have to fake. It's a smile where it's just like, can you please hurry up and take this picture because my face might crack if I have to hold this for too much longer, right? That's our reality. We have that constantly, so much so that it's really difficult for a lot of us to even identify what happy really looks like. What does happy actually mean? I have a client now who's just like, I don't even know how to identify what feeling something else feels like. All I have is this. That's where we are. That's where a lot of us are. And I forget her name, but she's a scientist and a sociologist, and I believe also a therapist. And she posts about the historical and generational trauma that especially Black people in this country, because we can talk to our own history, but I was recently reading a book, also the author there, I can't remember off the top of my head, but the name of the book is I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. Phenomenal book, and it's written by an English Black woman. And she goes into the history of the slave trade in England, which I had no idea anything about. I mean, I knew it happened, but I didn't know anything about it. And reading that book and understanding the history of not just Black people over there across the pond, as they say, but also people of color across the pond, because of colonization, there is a generational sense of dysthymia that's happening, because not only are we still not allowed to feel all of our feelings, but nobody has really bothered to actually say, oh, by the way, you're entitled to feeling about the shit that happened to your ancestors. You're entitled to actually wanting to be acknowledged that this is a traumatic experience. You're entitled, you're allowed, please feel all of your feelings because the thing was done to you and is being done to you consistently throughout the last, now we'll call it, if we're going to be honest, 1,000 years. And having to cope with, and I could get really scientific about stress responses and research that is actively being done in upstate New York right now, having to do with how the stress responses are being inherited from.
I was going to ask you about that. Yes, that is my next question. So before you go there, let me ask the question.
Go ahead.
And just, and when you said that about looking at our family pictures and finding, the whole panel was like, damn.
Yes.
Literally have to tell my dad, smile, and it's still not a smile.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. My dad always says, this is my smile.
Yes.
Same.
This is my smile. I am smiling.
I wanted to jump in on I wanted to jump in on that. I wanted to jump in on that, especially because, again, I think it goes back to weakness, but it also goes back to the long-lasting disdain for the LGBTQ community too within the Black community. So, like, when I play sports, right, there's more than one reason you don't smile in your pictures, in sports pictures especially. Number one, because you want to look intimidating. Number two, you know what I'm saying, you want to look hard, you want to look resolute, you don't want to be the weak link in the team. But a lot of that is also coupled to, if you smile in your pictures, if you're doing too much smiling, if you're doing too much interaction, people might start thinking you're gay.
Sus.
you know what I'm saying? You suspect. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, you know what I'm saying? If you touching too much, you suspect. If you hug too much, you suspect. If you know what I'm saying? Like, we literally, I'm pretty sure, you know, for the people that are going to watch this video at some point, everybody knows about, well, I'm 37. So everybody knows about the long-standing, you make a comment about something, you got to put a no homo after it. Otherwise, you know what I'm saying? You suspect. You know what I'm saying? So those things go hand in hand for sure. And especially, like I said, in sports culture, especially, it's a huge deal. Like you literally, we would have, I've had times where, you know what I'm saying, we take a football pictures and you have to retake the picture because somebody had a half a smirk on their face. And that carries with you for the rest of your life. So like you get to a point where you're getting ready to do something and you're like, nah, that looks sus. You know what I'm saying? So now you change how you are interacting just based on that alone, just based on not being a suspect. Because again, if it's something that's associated with the LGBTQ community, it's weak. You know what I'm saying? That's weak. You're a sissy, you're a punk, you're all of these names, you know what I mean? So they go hand in hand. And then that's not even dealing with the generational trauma, which you're told that was so long ago. You know what I'm saying? So now that we're just, I just learned about Tulsa like 5 years ago. Nobody taught us that in school. You know what I'm saying? So like when you learn those things and you're angry about it, the first thing you're told by greater society is that was so long ago. I didn't do that to you. Well,
that wasn't me.
Yeah, exactly. But that's unfortunate, but whatever. But at the same time, that same group will tell you to never forget 9/11.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
They'll tell you to never forget Vietnam. Yep. They'll talk about how courageous the people that fought in Vietnam were. They'll talk trash about
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor. You know what I'm saying? Or they'll act as though the Black community has literally not fought in every war that this country's ever had at all.
Thank you.
There's never been one war fought in this country that Black people weren't fighting. But then again, we're the ones that are always told, move on. That's the path. No. The only thing that you glorify is what they feel like they led. And if they didn't feel like they led it, or if you're just a footnote in it, it shouldn't be talked about. And
and that really like gets me going and gets me upset, you know, when you think about the Black people who have fought in America's wars. Only to come back and be treated like absolute crap, right? Like, my father being one of them, you know, he fought in Vietnam and he struggled for many, many years. Ever since he came back, it was the same thing. The stigma of one, not being able to talk about it because there is no one, unless you are sitting next to him on the battlefield and going through 30 days of combat under continuous enemy fire. There's nobody that you can talk to who will understand that unless they have been there too. So how do you balance and kind of wrap your own head around that as the person who's experiencing it? And then you come back home and it's people like throwing shit at you, like, you know, like talking down at you. Like it doesn't surprise me the level of suicides that happen, you know, with veterans and the veterans community, and the way we continuously, like, you see them on the streets, homeless. Like, how in this country are the people who supposedly defend us in these situations? When they come back home, they should have to have nothing else to worry about in life. They need to be set up for life. Like, I can't. Like, in
a country that's supposedly so great, right? And we're number one. We're number all one. Of that, right?
And patriotic.
Landed free.
Mental health problems.
Yes.
Okay. The same way Moana just said how much it bothers her. Like, literally, like I infuse that into my work because there is no, in my mind, there is no more patriotic person in this country than the African American soldier, especially if it's an African American woman soldier.
Yes.
Again,
shout out to my mom.
I'm just saying, as an African American male, God knows we get smacked upside the face in all ways. But then in the African American community, at least you're still a male. So there's still like, you're an African American male, so you're still here. And the Black woman has been carrying all this stuff all this time, but she's still not going to get the recognition that the African American male does. So, but that's a lot of time you don't get looked at as the most patriotic, even though you're hated for it. And then you come back home and have people literally trying to kill you for it.
Yeah. And so, I definitely have to tie into that because, like, one, speaking on, you know, African American or POC women, yes, I definitely understand that. I did my service with the Army. The treatment of women, especially in boot camp, and especially as the military was trying to evolve to recognize women in certain branches, you will hear drill sergeants and stuff saying you have to prove yourself 10 times as much as the guys. You have to show you are not weak. And even if anything a woman has was kind of defined as weakness. I remember one time I pulled out some chapstick and I was asked if I was trying to look pretty for my fellow soldiers. I'm like, no, it's chapstick, lipstick, chapstick, lipstick, same thing. And it's like,
No, it's not.
and then it's just like all these levels, like, you have to really do it. So you have that level. Then, as Moana says, you are promised when you swear in, the government tells you, we're going to provide this, all this to you for serving our country. As soon as you're either medically discharged, get out the service, or you retire, you find out that everything that was promised to you, our government has taken away. Like, I know I'm from a family of veterans. My dad was a veteran. I have aunts and uncles that are veterans. My grandfather, all that. And then you find out, like, you promise medical, dental, all this, but then they get out, well, we're going to give you dental. I mean, we're not going to give you dental. We're not going to give you vision. We're not going to give you all this, but you'll have
literally
medical,
have to fight for it.
But it's very minimal. And then, like, for me, I got hurt and all, but you have to fight for your benefits for being injured in the service to get that. And you have to go through mounds and mounds and mounds of paperwork, then fight here, fight over here. And a lot of them just get tired. I have fellow soldiers that I know, we have our little kind of clique that we know call each other when you get to a point of such depression that you're debating on, doing something to yourself. I've told, my friends, it's like, I don't care if it's 4:00 in the morning, call me. And I've had several situations of friends calling me that was in the service that I had to talk them down until an hour before I had to get ready for work and things like that. But then you have the aspect that this country has for any kind of emotional or physical complications or turmoil we go through, we're expected to get over it very quickly. Bereavement, you're given 3 days to bereave and get back to work and work as if you were at top of your game. Pregnancy, you're given 6 weeks to physically and mentally get over it. And so many BIPOC women, especially Black women, end up suffering postpartum depression, but they still have to expect to come back to work and work to their best. And so you end up finding out that being in the corporate work, I see so many women. I've even witnessed a coworker, she lost her son, had to come back to work right after bereavement. And what typically you see with most women is we bury ourselves into our work to deal with not thinking about that grief, that depression, everything. So we develop a different, like Shay says, this okay level of depression, but then we also develop anxiety because we're expected to be on top of our game for both POC men and women. No matter what we're going through, we're expected that. So we have this anxiety of expecting that something's going to fall beneath us
if we aren't our best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This job, this is our security. And, it just piles more issues.
Let me get back to my next question that I was supposed to ask. So, and you hit on it. Is it doctors are now saying that our trauma can be inherited in our DNA. And when you look at what has happened to so many BIPOC communities, the obvious slavery, and then you look at the Native Americans and their land was taken away and they're forced to live on reservations. And
let me interject on that one thing, because historically speaking, because I want to make sure we actually talk about the full trauma of what our natives experienced, okay, especially here in this country and along the Central and South America. So it wasn't just, oh, their land was stolen from them. Oh, their culture was stolen from them. Just very much, and similarly, give me a minute. I'll come out. Sorry. Just like with the way how in African slave families, the children could have been sold. Native Americans' children were literally stolen from them. And then what happened was those children were told the reason why we took you from your parents is because those people are horrible people. They don't really love you. We love you. Our Christian white God and white Jesus, we love you. Those people, those are heathens. Those people are, go down the list. Okay, that's why so many of them were getting sick. It's not because we gave them smallpox blankets. No, it's because they're actually evil. So their children were stolen from them and then brainwashed into thinking that there was something inherently wrong with who it is that they were born from.
Wow.
So it goes so much deeper. So that even when, you know, some of the policies changed and some of the children were allowed to go back home, they treated their parents and their elders with disdain and disgust. It goes so much further, the atrocities that were committed against the Native peoples. And again, I'm not trying to play the marginalized Olympics here.
No.
Saying it's more or better or worse or anything like that. I'm just saying the levels of atrocities that people in this country and along this part of history were that they suffered goes so much further than just, oh, we lost our land and our, because to me, when you say, oh, we lost the land and our culture, now we sweep that under the rug like, okay, well, you know, read a book, you get your culture back, right? Read a book or you know, get Rosetta Stone, you can learn your language, whatever that is. And it's a dead language anyway, so it doesn't matter. Whatever that case is, we do that, we sweep that under the rug. But when your children are stolen from you, when your children are brainwashed into hating you,
and that's your future.
What do
you do?
You can't, the loss of a child is still understood as the worst loss that a person can suffer. So I want to make sure that I put that in there and I interject that so that we can understand that these people didn't just lose their children, they lost generations of children to this.
Wow.
It's so important. Sorry,
no.
Carry on.
No, you're fine. No. And then my next example was going to be like what Moana talked about in another panel in Hawaii, the land being stolen from the locals, you know, the people who live there. And, you know, so there's all this generational trauma. And of course that affects your family and your home, especially if your land was stolen away from you. And now you have to, you know, and your people were stolen and your children. So how, talk a little bit about that genetic trauma and how that is affecting people.
So, and please stop me if I have to go a little bit deeper. Cortisol. Everybody know sort of kind of what cortisol is? Mm-hmm. Okay. So cortisol, it's a stress hormone.
Explain it.
Anyway, it's a stress hormone for the purpose of, you know, the interwebs or whatever. Cortisol is a stress hormone. Pretty much everybody has it. When just starting from just before inception. So during, right. So during the inception process, there are two things happening, right? And two factors that matter. The male's level of stress and the female's level of stress. Okay? Now, when I say inception, I'm not being non-inclusive. I'm saying just in terms of creating this being, okay? So when the dude ejaculated, whether it was inside someone or into a cup, his level of stress is being transferred in that semen.
Whoa.
Now,
Okay.
manfolk are kind of lucky in this regard because it's an immediate situation that's being replenished and changed relatively frequently. Women, on the other hand, we're born with our eggs. So from the day we are conceived, as soon as we are conceived and it is now we are women and our eggs are there. Our eggs are there while we're still in utero. Our eggs are experiencing all of the stresses, not just our immediate stresses as infants and fetuses or whatever in utero, but our mother's stress. Let me rewind so we can get a full picture of this. All right, ladies, or those of us with uteruses and eggs, okay, what you have, you were born with. And your mother was born with what she had too. And so was your grandmother. And so was your grandmother's grandmother, and your grandmother's grandmother's grandmother, and your grandmother's grandmother's grandmother. All of the stresses, all of the cortisol, every experience from the time she was in utero is transferred into those eggs. That is generational trauma. You want to know why it is that you react to stress the way you were? You can look back as far as who your grandmama's grandmama's grandmama was and what she was experiencing, because that is a part of your genetic makeup. That is a part of your genetic experience. Those stress hormones are there from the time we are in utero. And like I said, for manfolk, it's a little bit better maybe because you get to replenish that over and over again. But you know, if you're Black and you're living in this country, existing while Black is a freaking crime. You exist in a constant state of stress just by existing. You're in a constant state of stress, even in trying to relieve some stress, let's say, for example, by having sex. The life you create is already at a disadvantage genetically. So when they say, oh, you should get over that. Oh, but that was so long ago. Your mothers, not any of the women here, the height of your stresses, let's say, if you come from, your parents, the women in your heritage were, random aristocratic women, was learning a freaking instrument.
They had the good life.
Oh my God. It was so difficult because I might not be able to get married.
And when you put it into perspective like that,
I'm not trying to diminish the stress, but I'm just saying.
No, you're right. You're right.
Life.
It is. And when you break it down like that in the generations, like I legit had to fight back tears because I was just like, that's entire generations of broken people. And it makes me so sad.
Let me fix you. Let me stop you right there. It's so important. I was actually just having this conversation with my supervisor today. I know what I just said. We are not broken.
We're resilient.
Let me repeat that. We are not broken. You are not broken. Okay? I'm going to give you this. My mom was a carpenter. My dad was a carpenter, so I know a lot about tools. So forgive me if the analogy doesn't really transfer as well. Have you ever tried to put like a picture up in your house and to put the nail in the wall, you used a shoe? Or maybe, a bottle, right? Is that the tool that's for? No, but did it get the job done? Okay. My job as a therapist is to recognize you got the job done. As a matter of fact, the picture looks great where it's at. Good job. But by the way, there is this tool called a hammer. And as a matter of fact, if we're going to get technical, there's a thing called a finishing hammer with finishing nails. Finishing nails are for fine work, small work, right? They're really small. The finishing hammer, it's a lot smaller than, let's say, the standard hammer. And it does the job so that you don't damage that nail as you're trying to put it in the wall. Here, you try. Because I'm not going to necessarily do it for you. It's better if you try to put it in the wall yourself. How did that work out? Did it still get the job done? Do you feel a little better about how this tool can actually work in the rest of your life? For the rest of the pictures that you might want to put up later? Great. I've done a job. You've gotten this far. You've gotten this far with the tools you have. From the time you were born, you were given these tools and you did the best that you could. You got this far. You are not broken. We are not broken.
So
we learn how to do things a little differently.
Yeah. So we've got 10 minutes left, and I want to talk about solutions. What are some, well, before we go to therapy, I know a lot of us need to go to therapy. What are some things that we can do to help deal with our stress, our anxiety on our own? And Shay, I'll let you go first since you're the professional.
I'm going to say start with trusting yourself. Start with accepting that, like I said, you're not broken. Even if you have a mental health diagnosis, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. Understand that a lot of what happened, like I said, is stuff that was completely outside of your control. These are not things that make you wrong. These are things that happen to you. And it just means you got to do things a little bit differently. Accept that there is, quote unquote, nothing wrong with you, that you are not broken. Ask for help when needed, and take some time to take care of yourself whenever you get the opportunity. But the first thing is accept yourself as you are a perfect being in and of yourself. Yeah. You got this far. Congratulations. I'm proud of you.
Yeah. There's like, this is such a great topic. There's so many things that I want to talk about. And I just thought about, like, a lot of people of color like self-medicate to get by, and that's how we deal with it. And, but like, you should really go talk to someone too, because that would help you fix the main components and give you the proper tools to deal with this in the future, So and there's this, Morgan, you brought up Charlemagne earlier, and he goes to this, I cannot remember the guy's name, but he made the first mental health gym, Inception. Have you guys heard of that?
Mm-mm.
Really? Okay. Yeah. So I'll have to pull it up and give you guys the info, and like, he's on IG, but he made the first mental health gym. And what they do is, like, they do all these things where they hook you up and they see where your brain waves are, and they kind of get you back to normal. So instead of being at a 10, like, you can just be at a 5.
Equilibrium, not normal, equilibrium.
Equilibrium.
For
yes.
fair.
Balance.
Fair language.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So how do people know when they're ready to see a therapist? What are some of the signs?
Are you breathing?
Say that again.
She said, are you breathing?
Are you breathing?
Oh. Okay, got you.
So I think like what I would say too is that for someone, if maybe they're not ready for therapy yet, I think it could be healthy for them to listen to, podcasts or people who talk about these issues, even a panel like this, right? Like, because sometimes I feel like we can get so caught up in our own heads that like you think that you're the only person going through something, right? And when you start to hear that there are others out there like you, whether you know them or not, sometimes it's great when you don't even know them because then they won't judge you, right? But I think even hearing that can be freeing, and it opens you up to at least understand that it does happen. And then perhaps you get to some point where it's like, okay, now I think I feel safe enough to talk to someone and start to move in the right direction. But I mean, that's a big part of why I started my podcast and why, we continue to have these critical and challenging conversations. But I think it's very important for people, regardless of if you're a nerd or you're not a nerd or whatever community or, whatever your jam is.
If you're breathing.
Yes, exactly. Right. Are you human? Yes. Okay, you might need therapy.
And
I like
one
that
of the things
qualification.
I will kind of talk about, like we kind of talked about it earlier, like a lot of times in the BIPOC community, we look into self-medicating. A lot of times it's drinking, drugs or something, but then we also don't look into both the positive and negative coping mechanisms that a lot of times we're doing certain things that may not be drugs or alcohol related, but it's doing more damage to us, but it's just that temporary coping mechanism to just get by for that Band-Aid. Moment, give you that right. Band-Aid. And I think a lot of people don't realize the difference. And a lot of times they become self-defensive with their loved ones when you try to get them to break away from those negative coping mechanisms or those negative behaviors that you're acquiring. And they a lot of times they're like, well, this is who I am. You better accept it or you don't, or, kind of aspect. But as Shay was saying, and Moana was saying, it has to be to a point that they have to realize that they're like, we love everybody that's in our circle, but you can't force them into therapy because that will be more resistant and they will dislike you even more. So my question would be definitely for Shay or for the audience, anybody who's helped someone get into therapy, is what are the ways you can show that support or help guide them without pushing them, but guide them gently until they're ready to go into therapy and you being there for them while they go into that process?
I'm going to be really cliche and I'm going to say, be the change that you want to see. Like I said, anybody, everybody, if you are breathing, today's a great day for therapy. It's really hard for someone who, quote unquote, needs therapy. And again, if you're breathing, you need therapy. But, it's really hard if you're telling someone, hey, you should really get therapy. And they look at you and they're like, weren't you just doing whatever problematic thing that you do to like 5 minutes ago? Why don't you get therapy? So when you pull out, hey, this is my therapist, you should really consider getting you some therapy because it's working for me. Or you start just talking to them about the therapy that you're getting and how it's working out. Hopefully it's working out because, full disclosure, you should shop around your therapists because not every therapist is for you. We all are still human beings. We all have our different ways of communicating. I am not for everybody, okay? And I have no problem referring to someone else who may be able to work a little bit better, all right? So shop around for therapists. But if you yourself recognize that someone else could use some help, I'm going to use this as one of them hard to swallow pills or whatever. Sometimes recognizing or seeing something in other people is actually a mirror that you are not recognizing for yourself. Start with yourself. If you are looking at Uncle John, who really needs to get some help, you may just be trying to ignore your own need for help. You will have a much better time getting Uncle John to get some help if you show Uncle John that you yourself are getting help.
Yeah. So I think we're at our 50 minutes, right, Dana? One last quick question and then we'll wrap. What are some resources people can use to find help? Because I know money is an issue for a lot of people, and so is the lack of health insurance. So, and lately I've been seeing all these apps and ads on my phone popping up for mental health. So what do you recommend? What are some resources for people to make the first step?
To make the first step, especially when it comes to affordability, I strongly suggest going to your local college campus. You will be surprised on how many students are there who are in the process of learning how to do it and get paid for it. And so they have to do it for free.
Okay.
So go to a local college campus. As a matter of fact, let me also say pretty much every profession down to dentistry, you go to a college campus, you will find professionals who are learning how to do it, and you'll be able to get care for free or at least low cost. So definitely start there. And I also say that because as someone who was in the school, it was really helpful, number one, as a student in school, to be able to practice what it is that I was learning. And also as a student in school, it was helpful to be able to get some therapy. So, I don't know if any of y'all have ever been to New York back in the day. It was, I'm not only the client, I'm the
I'm the president. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not just a practitioner. I've also gotten some therapy. It's so important. So start with a college campus or you can also go to a healthcare practitioner, and they might be able to refer you to someone else who they know, especially if you go to a trusted healthcare professional. And when I say healthcare professional, I'm not saying mental health care professional, I'm being specific, healthcare. So like your physician,
your doctor,
your dentist, your whoever, your chiropractor, whatever, they might know somebody who is looking to be able to help someone. And then there are support groups that are free. Now, again, support groups are different because support groups, they don't have the same level of confidentiality. It's kind of the honor system, but you can at least still get some of that emotional, mental, psychological, communal support from people going through something similar to you. And again, shop around.
Well, thank you guys so much. That concludes this panel. This was a great conversation and I wish we had more time, but we've got to wrap things up. So just real quick, each of you, you guys have anything coming up that you want to talk about? Anyone? No, you're fine. You're fine.
Again, you can see me on Facebook, Shady Athena Reigns, LMSW, on Facebook. You can also find me on the Metropolis Podcast Network. I have a weekly podcast called The Conversation, where I talk about stuff, literally just whatever. I also get really personal there too, so you get to know a little bit or a lot of bit about me. I also have another podcast where I also am with a co-host called Ish. I also appear monthly with these lovely ladies over here on Moana Nui. On the last Thursday of every month, Rain Talks. And there I'm this professional Shay where I just talk about mental health stuff.
You are your full mental alchemist self. We forgot to throw that in there.
Call me the full mental alchemist. Yes, please. And on all of the social medias, you can find me as Rain O Change. So Twitter, Instagram, yada, 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 all of them. Rain O Change.
All right. Anyone else?
So again, the Moana Nui podcast broadcasts live every Thursday at 7 and 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can find our recordings on any podcast platform. We have Kickstarter campaigns coming up soon in September, October timeframe. This time it'll be for a children's book, and this is my way to positively put something back to balance out the negative that's in our DNA for our children. And so we're hoping that everyone will come and support. And we just want to thank DragonCon once again for providing and sharing this platform for us to have this very important conversation. So thank you so much.
Morgan?
So, I mean, the primary place that I interact usually is on Facebook, on my page at Morgan Iverson. I have a Instagram profile, Lumberjax. The E is just replaced with a 3. The show that I'm doing, Top 5 Live, we go live and stream every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we also had a podcast, a Super Shorts podcast, that we have started recording season 4 of the podcast. That we may be doing a Kickstarter for it, but we're also in the middle of shipping out the comics for the last 2 Kickstarters that we did for Lumberjax number 2 and Ace Play number 5. And you can find us at www.fourthwallcomics.com. fourthwallpros.com. And on YouTube at Fourth Wall Comics. You can find us any of those places.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, everyone. Once again, I'm Dana. You can find my photography at Danique Events. That's DANIQUIE Events on Instagram and Facebook. As Moana says, I am the other half of the Moana Nui Podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and also TikTok, which we just started getting into TikTok. You can also, this month, right after DragonCon, we are doing a series of replays of our panels. So if you enjoyed this topic, you can see some of the other topics of panels that we've had that we're replaying in the month of September. So you can tune in on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitch. Follow us on all of those platforms for Moana Nui Podcast, and you can get notified of all those replays so you can watch those, hear those conversations, and take some great notes from all the panelists we had. So once again, like Moana and everyone else said, we thank DragonCon for having this important conversation for the diversity track, because we need to hear these kind of things and move not only within the con community, but within our own communities outside of the con, cosplay, and comic communities. So thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this episode, and definitely enjoy the rest of the content that this track is providing.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. And last but not least, I'm Sheena Aloni, and you can catch me on Georgia Box Office, TV show about the film industry. And you can catch episodes on Amazon Prime and on YouTube. Thanks so much, guys. It was a pleasure having you all here. I learned so much, and I hope our audience did too.